All right, we left off on talking about Rousseau's social contract and what a direct democracy was. Um, Under this government, the people did agree to give up some of their freedom in favor for the common good. And you see that in today's society. Think about when we go to the airport. Um, we go through a scan detector. We have to take off our shoes. Think about when we're driving in a car and they have these cameras now. These are like violations of privacy that we don't mind because they're there to protect us. The social contract was written in 1762. Picture of that. So, in your notes, I want you to write down the comparison of Hobbes and Rousseau's contracts, and you see that they're both agreements between society and government. On one hand, Hobbes says people are wicked or self absorbed and we need to be controlled. On the other hand, we create the government, um, we give consent or the right to be governed to the government, um, that people should all be equal, nobility, there shouldn't be a class system, that should be getting abolished, get rid of. Beccaria. All right, he was from Italy. Really big in the justice system. He um, he thought that laws were there to like keep order. People will generally follow the rules if there's a consequence. The laws are not there to get back at people, and they're not there to avenge crimes. They're actually there to prevent these crimes from happening. He wrote on crimes and punishment. And a lot of what our system is set up today comes from what he says. And if we see on the next slide, well, that's him. But if we see on the next slide, these are the things that he warned against. These would be abuses of power or justice. And these are things that are not allowed in our society. We're not allowed to torture witnesses. We're not allowed to torture suspects. We can't have irregular proceedings of trials, which means like it has to be consistent. It has to be the same across the board. Um, we can't have cruel and unusual punishment. Punishments that were cruel. You can't torture somebody for stealing a loaf of bread. We do have a right to a speedy trial, and torture should never be used. That's in our Constitution, the right to a speedy trial. The degree of punishment should be based on the seriousness of the crime. Like I said, you're not going to tar and quarter somebody for stealing a loaf of bread. Maybe if they did some heinous crime, they would be executed, but the crime has to fit the time. Capital punishment, he says, should be abolished. Capital punishment, is the death penalty. You have to go through special proceedings here in the United States to get that. There's certain things that automatically have a capital charge attached to it. For example, killing a police officer who's identified, and I believe some other things. But you have to go through a separate trial to get that added on, to get that sentence put in. Saying that government should seek the greatest good from the greatest number of people. And basically what his ideas, they influenced our law, our criminal law, and how laws in the criminal justice system have changed. A lot of what we do is from this. All right, so we talked about our guys, we talked about our thinkers, so now let's talk about women. We remember that in the Renaissance, women were expected to know literature, right, so they can converse with the man, but they were not expected to create art. They were expected to be the muse for art. We didn't really talk about women with the scientific revolution, but now women in the Enlightenment era. Rousseau, for example, believed that a girl's education should only be on how to be a wife and the mother. Like, critics scolded women for reading. They thought it encouraged idleness, which is being and doing nothing, and wickedness. Wickedness in this time is like, not following the rules, doing bad things. It was all right for men to read novels. It was all right for men to sit down and discuss things and become educated, but, they felt the woman's role was as a wife and mother. Really, rarely well-behaved women make history. All right, so the women that we talk about usually in history are women who went up against the system. So Mary Estelle, she wrote a serious proposal to the ladies, and she was talking about how there wasn't education for women. She talked about the unequal relationships between men and women. Regardless, if the woman came from a wealthier family, and came with a huge dowry, and it was her money, the man controlled it. The woman was subservient to the man. She said, if all men are born free, how is it that all women are born slaves? I left a space on your notes, so not on the back of your notes. I want you to think what that means. Explain to me what you think this quote means. If all men are born free, how is it that all women are born slaves? Look back to what we just talked about with Mary Estelle. Look back to what Rousseau had said about women and think about that. I want a couple of sentences, all right? We'll go over that in class. By the way, if there's anything you do not understand, please note it on your notes so when we do discuss this in class, you have questions, okay? That's her. This is her proposal to the ladies. All right, Mary Wollstonecraft. She was a writer of Vindication of the Rights of Women. She said freedom, or the key to freedom, was getting education. If you look at even slaves in the 1860s, 1870s, they said the ability to read gave them freedom. Education continues to give people freedom. If you want to get out of poverty, get educated. It's still to this day, we know that education leads to freedom, whether it's financial freedom, physical abuse freedom, poverty freedom, anything. Education is the key for that. She said that women needed to be education to become virtuous and useful. We need to be able to be on the same playing field with men. If you just give us the tools, we can do a lot more. We could be nurses, we could be doctors. We had rights to participate in politics. This was a very big, deal. This woman writing this stuff, saying that she should be equal to men, basically. That's her. She didn't get a lot of education by herself. She was a self-taught learner. She and her sisters taught themselves to read. She did run a school for a little bit and married Richard Godwin. Died at 38, giving birth to a name you may recognize, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. You know, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. She later is the woman who wrote that novel. I believe we're going to talk about her next. There she is. This is her daughter. This is Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein. This is a remake of it. De Niro was in it. Kenneth Branagh. It was okay. It was all right. One thing with Mary Shelley, Frankenstein came out of, she was with her husband, Percy Shelley, and Lord Byron, and they were on holiday, and it was a stormy night, and they all decided, hey, let's see who can write the scariest story, short story, and she actually wrote Frankenstein that night. So that's the history of that. So women did help with the Enlightenment movement. The women who had money helped spread the ideas. These were these social gatherings called salons. And I want you to think about a room where, like, you've seen pictures of women sitting around talking. They might have a guy playing music, reading a poem, discussing politics. That's what these women did. They basically open up their homes, serve refreshments, and have thinkers and debaters come in and talk with them. Shelley was educated in math and science. She actually translated Newton's work from Latin into French, which helped spark the interest in science in France. That's her. Pretty. All right, another interesting thing. Children prior to the Enlightenment, they were believed to be natural sinful. They were basically little evil adults. Parents used corporal punishment. That's what basically raising them with a harsh hand. They treated them like miniature adults. You expected a 4-year-old to act like an adult. We know today that children at 4 do not act like adults. After the Enlightenment, this is where that push for, learning play comes into. People believe that children should be better educated and allowed to naturally mature into that adulthood, not to be pushed into it. Stop using corporal punishment. Allow playtime. Children learn through play. I mean, you learn through holding things and examining things and seeing things fail, like building blocks and seeing them fall down. This is when rocking horses, clothing, puzzles started getting introduced into the children's lives. Mother Goose books, little telescopes, under the Newtonian system of the universe. Children also would get discount tickets to museums and curiosity shows, which were like, just like traveling exhibits. They believed that these children should be educated at that level. They believed that they should be allowed to be kids. This was something that came out of it. Mother Goose, hey, we all know her. What was the impact? Well, you lost monarchy. We lost that absolute power and divine right meaning coming from God. People had the right to govern themselves. This also pushed the European monarchs to make changes and give more rights to their people. And these theories eventually came to make the American and French revolutions happen. So that's toppled two major monarchies. So 3 philosophies basically came out: progress, secular outlook, and importance of the individual. Belief in progress. You had Newton and Galileo, who made these types of discoveries. The success of the scientific revolution gave people that confidence that human reason could solve social problems. If we think about it, we can maybe make changes in the world. We wanted to end slavery. They believed that there was social equality and there needed to be improvements in education. Secular, meaning non-religious. Remember, non-religious outlook on life. We're going to look to science. We're not going to look to the Bible. We're going to get religious faith of superstitions and fear, and basically also promote tolerance. Everybody should be accepting of all religions. And the individual. Looking away from the church, looking away from royalty, and looking to yourself instead. People using their own reason and decisions to help them guide themselves between right and wrong. If you acted in your own self-interest, progress would eventually come. Think about a businessman. He's going to work harder for his own company than he may work for under somebody, because his self-interest is affected. You may watch these videos if you like as well. And that is the end of the PowerPoint. Now make sure you have all your notes complete. Any questions that you need clarification on? Any comments? I will be collecting this tomorrow, guys. Anything you think that could be changed or tweaked, let me know. This was the first run. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night, okay? If you have any questions, you can email me too, alright? My email is attached to Learn. All you got to do is go to the Contact Teacher section, alright?